Do you remember Avicii? The quiet Swedish producer who went from making music in his bedroom to becoming the most influential EDM artist of his generation. But behind the global hits and the billion streams was a young man drowning in exhaustion, anxiety, and a body pushed far beyond its limits. And even more shocking, the truth behind his final days is nothing like what the world believed. How could someone who brought so much joy be carrying so much pain? Rare footage, hidden diaries, and untold truths will be revealed. Stay until the end to understand why Avicii remains one of the most heartbreaking legends of modern music. Long before the world knew the name Avicii, long before stadium lights and global tours, Tim Bergling was just a quiet, imaginative boy growing up in Stockholm. A boy who felt things more deeply than the people around him ever realized. He was born into a well-known Swedish family. His father, Claes Bergling, a respected businessman, his mother, Anki Litten, a famous actress in Sweden. But despite the artistic environment, Tim was not the loud, confident child one might expect. He was shy, sensitive, a gentle observer in a world that often felt overwhelming. While other children were drawn to noise and movement, Tim gravitated towards solitude. He would spend hours alone in his room, immersed in imaginary worlds, experimenting with early computer programs, drawing, writing, and losing himself in sound. His parents described him as a child with an unusually open emotional channel. He absorbed everything: happiness, sadness, conflicts, disappointments. Even at a young age, emotions were never small for him. They were tidal waves. White medium star the first sparks of a genius. When Tim was 8, his older brother introduced him to electronic music. It was like a door opened inside him. Synths, beats, drum patterns. The idea of creating sound from nothing. It fascinated him. By the time he was 12, Tim was already making basic tracks on a computer. Not because he wanted to be famous, but because it felt like breathing. Music wasn't just an interest, it was an escape. In school, he struggled socially. Not in an obvious way. He wasn't bullied. He wasn't isolated. But Tim always felt slightly out of place, like he was moving on a different emotional frequency. Teachers said he was extremely intelligent, but easily overwhelmed. Friends said he was kind but distant. He lived in his head more than in the outside world. White medium star child who felt too much. Tim had a personality trait that would later make him both a genius and a tragedy: high emotional sensitivity. He felt pressure intensely. He internalized stress. He couldn't ignore discomfort the way others could. When he experienced conflict, even small ones, he carried the emotional weight for days. When he disappointed someone, the guilt lingered. This sensitivity made him brilliant at translating emotion into melody, but also made him vulnerable in an industry built on relentless demands. White medium star the discovery of purpose. Around age 14 to 15, Tim became obsessed with producing music. He locked himself in his room for hours and hours, experimenting with Fruity Loops, sampling, layering vocals, synthesizers, drum machines, recording imperfections. He would forget to eat, forget to sleep, forget to answer messages. Not because he was avoiding life, because he had found meaning. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't trying to become Avicii. He was simply following a feeling. His early tracks were raw, imperfect, but filled with a strange emotional clarity. He wasn't just arranging beats. He was translating what his heart couldn't explain in words. His parents didn't fully understand it, but they saw something growing inside him. Something consuming but beautiful. White medium star the struggle he never spoke about, behind the budding genius. Tim struggled with something few people knew at the time: severe performance pressure. Not from others, from himself. If a track wasn't perfect, he would delete it. If a project didn't meet his impossible standards, he would start over. He'd chase a vision in his mind that felt just out of reach. This internal tension, brilliance chasing perfection, would later drive him to global success. But it would also break him. For now, though, he was just a teenager in a quiet Swedish apartment, chasing a sound that felt like home. He didn't know that one day the sound would change the world. He didn't know that his melodies would become anthems. He didn't know the price he would pay for the genius growing inside him. All he knew was this: when he made music, the world felt calm. And for a boy who felt everything too intensely, calm was the rarest gift of all. By his late teens, Tim Bergling was producing music with a level of precision that shocked even seasoned DJs. He wasn't just making beats, he was sculpting emotional landscapes. Every kick, every synth, every melodic rise felt like a window into his internal world. His tracks didn't sound like a teenager experimenting. They sound like someone who had already lived 1,000 lives. Tim uploaded his early work on forums, blogs, and small music communities. He used the name Avicii, chosen because Avicii in Buddhism meant the lowest level of hell, a quiet signal of the darkness he carried but never spoke about. Producers noticed something different about him. His melodies weren't just catchy, they were haunting. His drops didn't explode, they unfolded like a story. His music made you feel something, even when you didn't know why. And slowly, the world began to listen. White Medium started a call that changed everything. In 2009, Avicii's life shifted forever when his future manager, Ash Pornori, heard one of his tracks. He described Tim as a hidden genius producing from a bedroom. Ash reached out, and within weeks, they formed a partnership. Ash saw what Tim couldn't see in himself, a once-in-a-generation talent. But he also saw something else, a fragile young man who had no idea how unprepared he was for fame. Still, Tim trusted him, maybe too much, and together they built a path into the international music scene. White Medium starred the birth of Levels. In 2011, Avicii produced a track that would redefine global EDM. It was simple, it was euphoric, it was addictive. Levels. The song didn't sound like anything else at the time, bright, uplifting, spiritual. Yet underneath the joy was a subtle melancholy, a kind of bittersweet ache that became Avicii's signature. Levels wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural reset. It became the anthem of an entire era. Clubs, festivals, radio, commercials, sports arenas. Everywhere you went, you could hear that rising synth and the iconic Etta James vocal. Tim felt overwhelmed. The world was celebrating him, but he still felt like the shy boy making music in his room. He didn't know how to handle interviews. He hated attention. He feared disappointing people. But the industry pushed harder. Fans demanded more. Promoters wanted him everywhere. And suddenly, Avicii's life was no longer his own. White Medium star The Touring Machine begins. As Levels exploded, Avicii went from playing small clubs to headlining festivals, Ultra, Tomorrowland, EDC, often within the same year. But behind the scenes, Tim was collapsing. He struggled with crippling anxiety before shows, insomnia, stage fright, physical exhaustion, pressure to keep producing hits, fear of letting people down. While thousands screamed his name, Tim often stood backstage shaking, trying to calm his breath. He felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. Producing music was his safe space. Performing it felt like torture. White Medium starred the superstar he never wanted to be. Between 2011 and 2014, Avicii became one of the most successful DJs in history. He earned millions. He collaborated with global artists. He performed 300 shows per year, a number no human body can handle, especially not one as sensitive as Tim's. People said he was unstoppable, but the truth was the opposite. The more famous he became, the more lost he felt. He once told a friend, "I love the music, but I don't know how to survive the life that comes with it." Tim was a creator, not a performer, a thinker, not a showman, an introvert trapped in the body of a global superstar. White Medium starred the price of Levels. Levels built Avicii's empire, but it also became the foundation of his downfall. The industry never let him slow down. Managers, labels, promoters, everyone saw a gold mine. And Tim, terrified of conflict, didn't know how to say no. He kept pushing, kept performing, kept trying to be the superstar the world wanted him to be. Meanwhile, his body was breaking. His mind was unraveling. His health was deteriorating. But no one saw the storm coming, not yet. For now, the world saw him as the bright, smiling genius behind Levels. But inside, Tim Bergling was already slipping into the shadows. The fame he never asked for was becoming the trap he couldn't escape. By 2013, Avicii had become the face of a global movement. The quiet boy from Stockholm was now one of the most recognizable artists on earth. Fans worshipped him. Brands chased him. Promoters fought to book him. His music was everywhere, in clubs, commercials, sports arenas, films, festivals. On the outside, it looked like a dream. On the inside, it was a slow-motion collapse. White medium star, the world sees a star. Tim sees a trap. For most artists, success brings freedom. For Tim, it brought confinement. Every interview, he looked uncomfortable. Every red carpet, anxious. Every festival stage, overwhelmed. He wasn't built for fame, not in the traditional sense. He was an introvert living inside a hurricane. At the height of his success, Avicii was performing over 300 shows per year. That meant 3 flights a day, constant jet lag, irregular meals, no sleep, no privacy, no silence. His team tried to protect him, but the demands were relentless. The EDM touring circuit was a machine, and Tim was the engine everyone depended on. White medium star, the body begins to break. In early 2012, after months of non-stop touring, Tim collapsed with severe abdominal pain. Doctors diagnosed him with acute pancreatitis, a life-threatening inflammation often linked to stress and heavy alcohol use. He was hospitalized, told to rest, told to slow down. But contracts didn't slow down. Festivals didn't slow down. The industry didn't slow down. And Tim, terrified of disappointing people, went back on stage only weeks later against medical advice. The pain never fully disappeared. He began relying on painkillers just to get through shows. The pills eased the symptoms, but they also blurred his emotions, altered his sleep, and fed into a cycle of dependence. His friends later described him as a man carrying far more suffering than he ever showed. White medium star, the industry pushes harder. As Avicii was struggling privately, the world demanded more hits, more tours, more albums, more appearances, more Avicii. And because Tim hated conflict, he rarely said no. Several insiders described moments where he was vomiting before shows, shaking backstage, needing 4 fluids between performances, crying from exhaustion, begging for breaks. But the pressure kept building. Managers feared canceling shows because of million-dollar losses. Labels pushed him to meet deadlines. Promoters saw him as the biggest draw in EDM. Tim wasn't a person to them anymore. He was a brand, a business, a machine, and machines aren't allowed to break. White medium star, the true era, a beautiful breaking point. In 2013, Avicii released True, an album that shocked the EDM world with its fusion of folk, country, and electronic music. Wake Me Up became one of the biggest songs of the decade. The world loved it, but the world didn't know the cost. Behind the scenes, Tim was falling apart. Panic attacks, addiction to prescribed medications, insomnia, emotional numbness, isolation, health deterioration. He once wrote in his diary, "I have no energy left. I'm trapped in a cycle I can't break." Even success exhausted him, especially success. Every time he produced a hit, the industry demanded another, and another, and another. Tim no longer felt connected to his music. He felt like he was producing on autopilot while his soul was burning out. White medium star, the surgeries that changed everything. By 2014, his health collapsed. He underwent gallbladder removal, appendix removal, hospitalization for a ruptured organ, treatment for pancreatitis, detox from painkillers. Doctors warned him explicitly, if you continue touring like this, you may not survive. It was the moment that could have saved him, if the industry had allowed it. But there were still contracts, still festivals, still expectations, still an empire sitting on his shoulders. White medium star, the breaking point. Tim makes a decision. In 2016, after years of suffering, Tim did something few artists at his level had ever done. He quit touring. He announced it publicly, saying he needed to prioritize his health and happiness. Fans were shocked. The industry was furious. Some called him ungrateful. Others said he was destroying his career. But for the first time, Tim chose himself. Behind the scenes, he broke down in tears. He wanted to live. He wanted peace. He wanted freedom from a machine that had consumed him. But although leaving touring saved his body, it didn't save his mind. The demons he ran from, anxiety, perfectionism, emotional sensitivity, followed him into the quiet. And soon, the silence became louder than the stadiums ever were. When Avicii stopped touring in 2016, the world thought he had finally saved himself. Fans believed he would recover, that he would heal, that stepping away from the machine would give him peace. But for Tim Bergling, silence was not peace. Silence was a mirror, one that reflected everything he had been running from. White medium star the quiet after storm. Without flights, without festivals, without crowds, Tim was suddenly alone with himself. For the first time in years, there was no schedule, no rush, no noise. And that terrified him. He had spent nearly a decade numbing his anxiety with chaos. The non-stop touring didn't just exhaust him. It distracted him. It gave him something to push against. When the noise stopped, the thoughts began. He journaled obsessively. Long, emotional entries about fear, confusion, existential dread. He wrote about wanting to understand life, understand happiness, and understand himself. He wasn't seeking fame anymore. He was seeking meaning. But meaning is harder to find than applause. White medium star the search for inner peace backfires. Tim began exploring meditation, spirituality, wellness retreats, holistic therapies, philosophical studies, Eastern healing practices. He traveled to calm his mind, but instead, he opened emotional wounds he didn't know how to handle. His sensitivity, which once fueled his genius, became a source of constant overwhelm. He described himself as too open, too sensitive, too aware, and he was right. Tim absorbed the world without any filters. Meditation, which helped many people, sometimes pushed him deeper into intrusive thoughts. He felt everything too intensely. Joy, yes, but also fear, guilt, and self-doubt. His team worried. His friends worried. Tim wrote, "The problem is not the world. The problem is me." This wasn't self-pity. It was despair. White medium star the pressure of perfection returns. Even without touring, the industry still expected music. Labels wanted albums. Managers wanted singles. Fans wanted the next Wake Me Up. Tim, always a perfectionist, pushed himself harder than anyone else ever did. He could spend 20 hours straight on a single melody, then delete it, then start again. He said, "There's a sound in my head I can't reach." The more he tried to find it, the more frustrated and hopeless he became. He loved music, but music was also the thing that exhausted him the most. White medium star the pain of being Tim, not Avicii. As months passed, Tim experienced something he never prepared for: identity loss. Without Avicii, the tours, the crowds, the adrenaline, he didn't know who Tim Bergling was supposed to be. He wasn't a performer. He wasn't a celebrity. He wasn't a businessman. He was just a fragile, hypersensitive human being trying to navigate a world that felt too loud for him. He told a close friend, "I can handle Avicii better than I can handle Tim." That was a tragedy. The persona that destroyed him was easier to carry than the person he truly was. White medium star the return of mental pain. Tim suffered from severe anxiety, panic attacks, existential dread, obsessive thoughts, insomnia, physical tension, emotional overload. Doctors prescribed medications, then more medications, then medications to balance the side effects of other medications. Tim hated how the pills made him feel. Numb, detached, disconnected from his music. He wrote, "I'm too sensitive for this world. Everything hurts. Everything overwhelms me." He often cried alone. He often retreated into silence. He often disappeared from friends for days. He wasn't avoiding them. He was drowning quietly. White medium star the conflict with his team. Tim loved his family, his friends, and his team, but he also felt constantly misunderstood. People wanted him to get better. People wanted him to relax. People wanted him to be happy. But Tim didn't know how. He felt pressure to return to touring, pressure to produce more, pressure to be the Avicii the world adored. One diary entry read, "They want me to be something I can't be anymore." Another, "If I say no, I disappoint people. If I say yes, I destroy myself." This emotional trap consumed him. White medium star isolation disguised as recovery. Tim traveled the world in search of peace. The US, Sweden, Italy, the Maldives, Peru, and eventually Oman. He met monks, therapists, healers, philosophers, spiritual teachers. Everyone gave him advice. Everyone tried to help. But no one understood the depth of his sensitivity. He wasn't just stressed. He was unraveling. He often described a feeling of being too open, being emotionally raw, having no protection, being unable to switch off his mind. He wrote, "I feel like a soul without skin." White medium star, the internal collapse. By 2017 to 2018, Tim's internal struggle reached a breaking point. He battled intrusive thoughts, overwhelming philosophical anxiety, existential panic, fear of being alive, fear of not being alive, inability to rest or disconnect, emotional overload from spiritual retreats. His sensitivity, once a gift, now felt like a curse. He told someone close, "I'm exhausted, not physically, but mentally. My mind won't stop." Despite the love surrounding him, despite his success, despite the music that changed the world, Tim felt trapped inside a mind he could not quiet. This wasn't weakness. This wasn't failure. This was a sensitive human being crushed by a world that never slowed down enough for him to breathe. Everything led to Oman, the calm place he chose to rest, but where the silence became too loud. And soon, the world would learn the outcome of a battle Tim fought alone for far too long. In April 2018, Tim Bergling traveled to Oman in search of something simple and elusive: peace. Not fame, not inspiration, not a new album, just quiet. His team had encouraged him to take a break, to change scenery, slow down, breathe. And Tim, exhausted by years of internal battles, agreed. Oman, with its soft desert winds and quiet beaches, seemed like the perfect place for a sensitive soul seeking stillness. For a moment, it even worked. White medium star, the calm that hid the storm. Friends who saw Tim during his first days in Oman described him as lighter, relaxed, smiling more. He swam in the ocean, watched sunsets, talked about life, philosophy, and meaning. He laughed, genuinely, softly, the way someone does when they finally feel safe. But psychological calm can be deceiving. Tim's journals from those days reveal something else entirely. A mind still spinning, searching, reaching for answers that hurt more than they healed. He wrote about the nature of consciousness, fear of ego, fear of attachment, existential anxiety, the fragility of human life, his own sensitivity. Some entries were peaceful, others were philosophical spirals. A few were deeply concerning. His thoughts were expanding faster than he could contain them. White medium star, the pressure that followed him. Even in paradise, the outside world followed. Emails, requests, pressure, deadlines, questions about new music, questions about touring, questions about his future. Tim felt torn between two identities. Avicii, the global superstar everyone needed. Tim, the fragile human desperately trying to survive his own mind. He wrote, "I feel like I am two different people, and both are exhausted." Even in Oman, far from studios and stages, the conflict remained. White medium star, the night before, on April 19th, Tim had dinner with friends. They described him as calm, present, thoughtful. He talked about plans, ideas, possibilities for life outside music. He smiled, he joked, he ate well. Nothing seemed alarming. Nothing suggested he was nearing a breaking point. This is one of the most painful truths about suicide. The moment of calm can be the most dangerous. It gives the illusion of recovery, when in reality, the person has reached emotional exhaustion so complete that they no longer feel distressed. Tim's calm wasn't peace. It was resignation. But no one could have known that then. White Medium Star, the final morning. On April 20th, 2018, Tim woke up early. The sun was rising over Muscat. The ocean was quiet. The resort was peaceful. He exchanged small talk, walked alone for a while, carried himself gently, almost serenely. No one saw the storm inside him. Sometime shortly afterward, alone in his villa, Tim took his own life. There were no messages of blame, no dramatic gestures, no cry for attention, just a sensitive soul overwhelmed by a world that had been too loud, too demanding, too painful for far too long. He was 28 years old. White Medium Star the moment the world shattered. When news of his death broke, disbelief swept across continents. People froze in shock. Fans cried in the streets. Memorials appeared in Stockholm, Los Angeles, New York, Tokyo. Huge crowds gathered. DJs across the world stopped their shows to honor him. For a generation, this wasn't just a celebrity death. It was losing the music that held them together. Tim's melodies have been the soundtrack to first loves, heartbreaks, long nights, hope, survival, and suddenly, the man behind those melodies was gone. White Medium Star, the family speaks the truth. At first, the media speculated. Rumors spread. But then his family released a statement, one of the most honest, devastating letters ever written about mental health. He really struggled with thoughts about meaning, life, happiness. He could not go on any longer. He wanted peace. They confirmed what many had feared. Tim didn't die because he was weak. He died because he was tired, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. He had fought harder than anyone knew. White Medium Star, the real reason behind his death. Tim's death was not caused by fame, drugs, the EDM lifestyle, one event, or one mistake. It was the culmination of clinical anxiety, existential panic, years of emotional overload, a highly sensitive personality unprotected in a brutal industry, medical complications, burnout, spiritual overwhelm, a lifetime of inner conflict. Tim had been trying to understand life so deeply that the process itself consumed him. He wasn't running away. He wasn't giving up. He was overwhelmed by a world that felt too loud for the gentleness of his heart. White Medium Star, the questions that still haunt us. Could he have been saved? Should someone have been there? Did we push him too hard? Should the industry be blamed? But the truth is complicated. Tim was surrounded by people who loved him. He had family who cared deeply. He had friends who stood by him. He had professionals supporting him. But he also had an inner world so intense, so heavy, so unfiltered, that no external support could fully quiet it. His sensitivity was his genius. His genius was his burden. White Medium Star, the final truth. Tim Bergling didn't leave because he didn't love life. He left because he felt life too intensely. He once wrote, "The joy is too short. The pain is too loud." And that sentence may be the closest anyone can come to understanding the tragedy of Avicii. He didn't want to die. He wanted the suffering to stop. And on April 20th, 2018, it finally did. When the world learned that Avicii had died, something rare happened. Something that doesn't occur with most public figures. There was a collective silence, a global pause, a grief so widespread and immediate that it felt like entire continents were holding their breath. Tim Bergling wasn't just an artist. For millions, he was a source of light, the sound of their best nights, their darkest nights, their healing, their hope. White Medium Star, the world breaks into mourning. Within hours, tributes erupted across the globe. Fans gathered outside Sergels Torg in Stockholm, blasting levels and crying together. In Miami, where Ultra Music Festival had once launched his career, DJs played Wake Me Up as thousands of people raised their phones in the air. In London, fans created spontaneous memorials with flowers, headphones, candles, and handwritten letters. In New York, giant billboards lit up with the words, "Thank you, Avicii." Clubs across Europe went silent for a minute before dropping his tracks in emotional tribute sets. Even DJs who rarely spoke publicly, Calvin Harris, Zed, Martin Garrix, Skrillex, posted messages filled with shock and heartbreak. The reaction wasn't performative. It was raw. It was real. Because Avicii wasn't just music. He was memory. He was connection. He was a feeling. White medium star, the industry reflects on its role. For the first time, the electronic music industry confronted a painful question. Did the lifestyle we glorify kill one of our brightest stars? Artists began speaking openly about brutal touring schedules, lack of mental health support, pressure to produce non-stop hits, unhealthy coping mechanisms, emotional burnout, the illusion of celebrity happiness. Avicii's death exposed a truth long ignored. The industry that celebrates joy often destroys the people who create it. Tim's passing forced a global reckoning, especially among young DJs who have been taught to work until you break. White medium star, the family's grace. Through the grief, Tim's family displayed extraordinary strength. They didn't blame. They didn't accuse. They didn't point fingers at the industry. Instead, they spoke honestly about Tim's sensitivity, his struggles, his search for meaning, and his deep love for music. Their statement, he wanted peace, became a rallying cry for better mental health awareness around the world. The Bergling family later created the Tim Bergling Foundation, dedicated to mental health advocacy, suicide prevention, and music education. It was a perfect reflection of Tim's spirit, gentle, compassionate, hopeful, white medium star, the reevaluation of his art. After his death, millions revisited Avicii's catalog, and suddenly the melodies hit differently. Wake Me Up sounded less like a celebration and more like a plea. Hey Brother carried a heartbreaking sincerity. Waiting for Love felt like a promise he couldn't keep. The Nights became an anthem of advice he could not follow. And Lonely Together suddenly felt like a confession. People realized the truth. Avicii hadn't been writing dance music. He had been writing emotional diaries in the language of melody. His songs weren't meant to fill stadiums. They were meant to fill the empty spaces inside people. White medium star, the legacy he left. Tim Bergling left behind. A revolution in EDM, proving that electronic music could be deeply emotional, a standard of melodic storytelling unmatched in modern music, a blueprint for sensitivity in a world that glorifies hardness, a global conversation about mental health in the arts, a foundation that continues to save lives. But the greatest legacy? The millions of people who feel less alone because of him. Avicii didn't just change music, he changed people. His melodies, bright, aching, hopeful, broken, continue to echo across the world, long after the man who created them is gone. He may have left us at 28, but the emotional universe he built will outlive generations, because some stars don't burn out. They leave a glow that refuses to fade. When the world remembers Avicii, it remembers the light first. The melodies that felt like sunrise, the drops that lifted entire crowds into the air, the gentle soul who spoke through sound because words were never enough. But behind that brightness was a young man who felt life more intensely than most people could bear. Tim Bergling didn't set out to become a legend. He simply followed the feeling inside him, the pull toward beauty, toward harmony, toward making something that made the world feel less lonely. And in doing so, he gave millions a soundtrack to their hopes, their heartbreaks, their joy, their youth. But sensitivity is a double-edged gift. The same openness that fueled his genius also made him vulnerable to a world that moved too fast and demanded too much. He wasn't weak. He wasn't lost. He was overwhelmed by emotion, expectation, meaning, and a mind that never stopped reaching for answers. His story is not a cautionary tale. It is a reminder that brilliance often lives in fragile places, that kindness can come from quiet souls, that the brightest sounds can emerge from the deepest wounds. Avicii's life ended far too soon, but his impact didn't. He changed the shape of modern music. He changed the lives of millions who found comfort in his melodies. And he changed the conversation about mental health in the creative world. He is gone, but he is not silent. His music continues to rise like light through a dark sky, soft, steady, luminous, because some artists don't fade.